Yep. All right, everybody. Welcome to the New York GA Winter Webinar Series number 2. Today, we're very lucky to be joined by Eoghan Gallagher from Killybegs in County Donegal. Thanks very much for joining us there today, Eoghan.
Thanks, man, for having me, lads.
No bother. So, yeah, Eoghan is an established member of the Donegal. Sorry, I said New York there first. The Donegal Senior County Team. He was an All-Star nomination in 2018 and an All-Ireland finalist with the Donegal Minors in 2014. And he was, I believe, you have 3 Ulster Championship medals on. Am I right in saying that?
2.
In 2? Oh, sorry.
You're all right.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, I was counting your minor one as well.
Oh, it would be under 21 makes it 4 if you can count the underage.
Makes it 4, yeah. So, thanks very much for having us on the show. So basically, look, we're just going to try and learn a bit more about you, about your journey from underage player at Killybegs to now one of the top defenders in the country, a very prominent attacking threat from defense. You must be a corner forward's nightmare to mark. So we're just going to try and find out a bit more about, what your understanding of the game and how we can take your understanding and try and help some players out here who are very familiar with the skills of the game, but they want to understand a bit more about the tactical side of it that you're able to bring, if that's okay, Eoghan.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay. Mickey, do you want to start off with the first?
Yeah, from your player pathway from your club to Donegal, how did that come about? Was development?
Sorry, I just broke off there.
Yeah, sorry, Mickey. I think you froze there. I think the question we're trying to ask is from your club level, from playing underage with Killybegs to the Donegal Minors. Can you talk to us a little bit about your own underage success, or what playing underage football was like, and how you started to get involved with the Donegal development squads and that?
I suppose my father kind of took me up to Killybegs when I was 4 years old. He was actually coaching the under 8s at the time, so he took me up and just kind of started from there, doing wee bits from there, and progressed. I was involved with some strong underage teams with Killybegs. We won under 12 Division 1 county title in 2006. I would have been 10 years old. But actually have been Hugh McFadden's, the Donegal midfielders age group.
Yeah.
As a team. So luckily enough, I was able to start in that team and I was only 10. And one of the biggest things I found whenever I was an underage player, I learned far more playing out of my age group against the older players. Against players who are physically stronger than you, faster than you. It makes you nearly, in your own age group, you could have a good day at under 10 level. You could go out and score 4 or 5 points, have a very good game, and then you go and play an under 12 game, and you might have not a good day. You get a bit of a roasting, really. But then progressing on, I was involved with a couple of good teams, even in my own age group. We were very competitive, won a couple of divisional titles. And then the time I was 15, then the development squad started in Donegal. It's actually funny enough, Declan Boner was my manager as part of the Southwest Donegal team. We're broken into 4 teams, and then when you get under 16 level, then it's a whole county, and Declan then was our manager again. So I have had him for the whole way up from when I was 15 until now. I'm 24, coming 25, and he's still my manager. But I think one of the biggest progresses thing that they always start with in the development squads in Donegal was just coaching the skills. Sean Noonan came in with Declan from Buncrana. Whenever we were in the Buncrana Cup, which would be under 16 level, and he focused very heavily on the whole skills aspect, breaking it down, making it really simple, focusing on just kick passing, like just 20-meter kick passing the first day, and then your one bounce pass and just outside of the foot and developing on from there. But the whole part of I've been part of a lot of underage teams and the chopping and changing of players. There was a massive change between our under 16 team and our minor team, and then again under 21 level. Some guys step up, some guys go back down. That's just part and parcel of football. So my advice would be is, if you stick at it, no matter what, you'll get your opportunity if you continue to stick at it. Like we had a lot of fellas, Kieran Gillespie, I remember, was number 33, 34 in our under 16 level, started fullback, then a minor, was straight up to seniors then the following year, and was playing 19 years of age for Donegal senior football. Unfortunately, he's had a couple of injuries in the last few years, but that's just an example of the development of players, and I think from a coaching point of view, it's hugely important to keep everybody involved. You just don't know how players are going to develop. The number 34, 35 is just as important as your number 1, number 2 players. I think people progress at their own rate, and it's very important to keep everybody involved, because we have a saying now, people talk about the Achilles heel, but the wolf's really only as strong as the pack, as the weakest link in the pack, I think that's a huge thing that I noticed anyways in player development. Everybody develops at different stages.
That's great. No, that's funny, because we actually had a very similar story from Angela Walsh the other day. She'd won 9 All-Ireland football titles with Cork and part of that Cork ladies team, but she couldn't make her under 16 team, when she was 16, and 2 years later she was starting for Cork seniors. So that's amazing. I would always have thought Kieran Gillespie would have been a standout centre back on an underage team, but it's amazing to hear that his journey from maybe being down the pecking order to being a county senior player was actually quite short, but he must have just developed at a very quick pace, over that time frame. But a lot of patience from the coaches probably brought him on as well. Eoghan, a lot of people that would be familiar with Killybegs would probably be very familiar with another, with Shamie Coleman and his success. I remember his underage team. He was 2 years younger than me. He would have been part of that another very famous Killybegs underage team, which would have been. They would have got to Ulster minor club finals and stuff, and Shamie would have been the standout players there. But he went down a soccer background. With your experience, did you play many other sports growing up, or were you predominantly just a footballer?
I used to do multiple different sports. I done GAA, obviously, soccer. Used to do athletics as well, and then I just went to swimming lessons as well. But I think there's the more sports you can play, the more variety you can pick up from different coaches. I don't think I've ever gone into any sport and I haven't picked up something from one coach. I would say I've taken a little bit from every single coach I've ever had. I was whenever we were playing soccer, we had a very strong soccer team with St. Catherine's.
Yeah. And
I learned an awful lot. Lachlan O'Rourke was the coach I remember probably picking the most up of, him and Hughie McFadden, which would be Hugh's father. He's the coaches. Now, this was 2 years out of my age group, but, I learned an awful lot from them. Just on the whole, I think it's more relevant in GA today than what it was back years ago about, soccer's kind of more positional based. You mark whenever a player comes in your zone, that kind of thing, which became prominent in Gaelic football there for a while with the zonal defences, and even for kickouts nowadays, how it affects and each player moves. Definitely learned an awful lot from soccer. And then in terms of athletics, I think GA is a hugely athletic game. I think the development that I got from doing athletics I think I done athletics up until I was 14 or 15.
Were you with Finn Valley or anything, Eoghan, with the athletics?
Sorry?
Club? Were you with Finn Valley Athletics? Were you with a higher level program of athletics, or were you with the local athletics team in Killybegs area?
We used to have a big athletics club in Killybegs. Bernie O'Callaghan used to be in charge of it. And I remember, I think the last race I ever won was the community games. Actually, it was myself and Conor Morrison, another fella now in the Donegal team as well, tied in a race in Milford, and we redo the race then. I remember I used to just have, a base of athletics from Gaelic training, soccer training, swimming even.
Yeah.
And then it was probably the first time I ever properly trained for an actual race, timing, doing consistent athletics training.
What was your event? Or
did
you have a favorite event in the athletics?
I used to prefer the 100 meters, but my go-to race probably was a 800 meters.
Yeah.
It's just
great.
the sprinters were a wee bit too fat.
Yeah, very short distance kind of stuff. Like you were never more into the 5Ks or the 10Ks or that kind of thing.
No, they're not as enjoyable now.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot longer. No, that's great. And so obviously you mentioned Declan Bonner has kind of been a huge part of your playing career. You had him from 14, 15 up
14
until
or 15, yeah, up until now.
24. So almost for 10 years. I think Declan Bonner must have been your coach at one point for probably 7 or 8 of those years out of the 10 years. And obviously we know he's going to be watching later on, so you have to be nice to him. But what kind of things does Declan bring to a youth coaching setup? So what way, obviously everybody growing up would know who Declan Bonner is. He was on that famous 1992 team, played corner forward, and he would have been a bit of a hero, to my generation growing up, obviously to you as well. But what kind of characteristics would he have when he coached the young players that made you kind of, proud to represent the jersey?
One of the things he always just to, preached to us was consistency in everything you do. If you're doing a hand passing drill, whether you're doing it for 20 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 30 minutes, it was always done at the same level of consistency and quality. There was no drop off in technique just because, you might get bored the odd time, which does happen at underage teams, but he used to continue to pull us up and just ensure that, the quality of the session was always good. In regards to skills, he says the energy will come, but he used to always put a huge emphasis on just the basic skills at the start of underage, and then obviously the tactical development that there came into it a wee bit later on. At the start, all he was focusing on was the skills of the player, kicking, hand passing, soloing, being able to look up off the shoulder, timing of runs, that kind of thing, and that was a huge focus for him, was just the consistency of skills. It's something he still preaches to us today, even with the seniors. The skill execution is so important. I think even when Joe Schmidt was the Irish rugby coach, he used to preach basics with the Irish rugby team. Wow. And I think even if you hear New Zealand rugby, the higher up you go, the more important the basics get. It's just a matter you have to deliver them a wee bit faster, and the margin for error is just less. So that's why I think why he always focuses on the basics. It's probably a wee bit of a cliche to just say focus on the basics, but that's why. And whenever the higher up the ladder you go, the more important and less time you have to think about them, and it just has become more natural and more natural.
Definitely. You were part of a very special minor team in Donegal history. They would have been probably the first minor team. They were the first minor team to get to an All-Ireland final. They had a very historic win against Dublin. Can you tell us a bit about, why that team, or what was special, slightly more special about that team than other teams you were a part of? They seem to have been, in terms of Donegal underage teams, probably the, one of the more talented ones that have came out of the county. And then, Donegal wouldn't be that famous, I suppose, for underage success, but that team was definitely a very special, even going back to the 80s and stuff, where your dad would have been involved. They were brilliant teams, but your team was an outstanding team at minor. What was it that Declan was able to bring to that team?
I think one of the most important things he brought in, it was kind of the first year an underage team in Donegal was introduced to a wee bit of strength conditioning. They weren't just handed a program. Everybody was kind of monitored. One sense, we would go in for checkups every 6 weeks at the start, just to see how lads were getting on. But it was athlete development. It was actually Paul Fisher, who recently just left. I was with him the whole way up from when I was 17. So now until 24, he just left there at the end of the last year. But it was one of the first. I think it was the first minor team in Donegal to have a proper S&C program in place, and definitely got a good coaching team involved. And he used to harp on to us about how we must believe. He said we're as good as anybody else in the country if we really truly believe we are. And, you know, we just kind of took it off from there. And I think Declan put the emphasis on it very early, whenever we were 15, 16, how important it was to be competitive in every game, you know, and try and win every game. And luckily, like, we didn't lose a game the whole way up from under 16, under 17. We won the Buncrana Cup, won the Jim McGuigan Cup, and under 17. Then going into minor, you know, we knew we were a strong enough team in Ulster. So we kind of had that belief going in the start of the year that, you know, we have a good shot at winning here, which helped everybody kind of buy in.
Yeah.
And
in terms of, you know, because a lot of what we're talking about today is developing the mindset of players. Like, in terms of your own mindset, obviously, like when you're 16, 17, 18, you're not as experienced as you might be now. Like, but how did you approach those big games, you know, in terms of, like, you know, going from, you know, playing club games or whatever to playing in Croke Park against the Dubs or against Kerry and that? Like, how did you find that, you know, the psychological aspect of the game going into that? Or was there anything that you worked on, or is pressure something that doesn't really faze you too much?
I think going into the games, we felt we were very well prepared. It's like going into an exam knowing, you know, all the answers kind of going in before the exam.
Yeah.
So we kind of felt going into the games, you know, we were well prepared. Declan had us well rehearsed in what we were going to do or try to do tactically. You know, we had everybody fit. We had a lot of players playing well. We had a lot of good players. We felt that we could deliver in them games, but I think the time we got the real belief, you know, that we were one of the best teams in the country at minor levels. We played Dublin in a challenge game, I think 2 or 3 weeks out from the Ulster final. It was immediately after the Ulster semi-final. I think we played Antrim in the Ulster semi-final and we didn't play particularly great. Yes, we beat them well, but we didn't play particularly well. And I just remember we ended up drawing with Dublin. And I think then, from that moment on, the penny really dropped, you know, that we've a great chance. And then kind of going into the games then, I would just kind of follow the same routine. I do the exact same routine for the club games as I done for the county games. You know, go for a wee walk the day before, listen to a bit of music, and then I ate the exact same foods, you know, every time going into the game. So not a lot really changed for me, just trying to keep it consistent as possible. But I think
what's on the menu before a game for you? Like, if you have, say, imagine that you have a game on a Sunday, are you changing your meal patterns on the Saturday night or
no, I try to eat the same meals on a Saturday as well.
Right.
So Saturday lunchtime, it wouldn't bother me too much, but Saturday night would always be spaghetti bolognese for me. And then depending whether the game is at 2 or 4, I would just have breakfast at 8 o'clock. And then if the game's at 2, I would just have a second breakfast then about 11. That could just consists of, you know, scrambled eggs, beans, porridge with honey, bits of fruit, that kind of thing. But just on the mindset side of things, I think the fact that we were so well rehearsed and trained and we felt we were well prepared, I think that kind of took care of the mindset for us as a minor team, because we know a lot of minor teams were nervous going in. Declan spoke about that. Like, he didn't hide away from the fact that is what happened, but he was honest. He said this is the best prepared minor team we've ever had in Donegal, and we took confidence from that going into the game.
Oh, very good. And yeah, okay. And then just from your own career then after that, and you went from your finished minors at 2014, and you would have been under 21 then 2015, but then in your second year of under 21, you got a call up to play, was it McKenna Cup then in 2016, to play some McKenna Cup with Donegal. Had you been on the panel before that, or were you training with them, or did you into the senior setup?
So the year after minors, a lot of our team was called up to under 21s naturally, just with it being a successful minor team. I was fortunate enough to get the call up by Maxie Curran, who was the manager at the time. And then we got beat by Tyrone in the Ulster under 21 final that year. And I think it was 2 weeks after Rory Gallagher gave me a call and asked me did I want to go up to training. So I was delighted, you know, I was going up to play with or go up and train with the guys that I had watched from Hill 16 in 2012, left the All Ireland and being the All Ireland final the year before whenever we were minors. And, you know, it really was a dream come true. I was called up immediately after. I think Donegal played Tyrone in the first round that year in the preliminary round. And they played Armagh then in the quarter final. So that was kind of my first time up, was the summer of 2015. And, you know, I got a quick realization, you know, this still at the physical development I had to go through. You know, I went up my first few sessions and I started getting pushed off the ball. The training sessions were much longer and I was struggling come the last 40, 50 minutes of the session to continue to run and sprint and that kind of thing at the same power level that the more senior players were. So I went into the panel weighing 72, 73 kilograms. And I remember, like, at the end of the year, I was with Gallagher, was an S&C coach at the time. And I met him, and, you know, him and Rory put a huge emphasis on me putting on weight. So I went into the gym, was doing gym sessions 4 or 5 times a week then after that year ended with seniors, planning for the following year in 2016. And yeah, I put on, I think it was 15 kg in 6 months.
Jeez.
But I wasn't doing any running.
You must have a few spaghetti bolognese dinners there for 15 kgs. Like, what? How did you do a power based workout, like strength workouts? Were you doing a lot of heavy lifting, or how did you manage to put on that kind of like?
It was a lot of like hypertrophy work, it's called. So it would be a lot of higher reps with I think it's more tempo based work, so it'll be kind of more time under tension, that kind of thing. And you know, we just put a huge emphasis on it, but I wasn't running over this period, so it was a lot easier for me to put on the weight. But I remember then when I went back to run in January, I could feel I was too heavy. Like, I went from doing absolutely nothing, just gym work, to going back to running, and it took me, I would say, 3 or 4 months to kind of adjust to my own body. I needed to lose weight then, because it was all kind of top heavy. But yeah, then in 2016 made my debut for the Donegal seniors in the McKenna Cup. So we did, and I played 2 or 3 National League games as well. Made my championship debut against Monaghan, in the Ulster semi-final.
You didn't get to come to New York in 2017?
No, we didn't get out to New York, though. We were under 21s that time.
All right, yeah.
So the Ulster final was actually supposed to be played before we went to New York, but it was I think it was called off on the Wednesday night for a frozen pitch or waterlogged pitch. We ended up having to play it on the Monday night. And then the All-Ireland semi-final then was the following Saturday. So they were out that week that we were playing the All-Ireland semi-final.
Very good. And in terms of then, like, as you're obviously very young, getting onto the senior panel, and as you said earlier, you had a lot of lads there from the 2012. Like, I'd imagine there, the core of that team was still playing. You had like your Michael Murphys and was Colin McFadden, and all them lads would have been still there. Like, a number. Colin
McFadden, Carl Lacey, and all them were still there. Yeah.
How did you find then making that step up? Was it intimidating, like, or like were you a bit like, would you be a kind of a naturally shy person? Like how did you find that transition then to make it onto the senior county team?
Outside of the pitch, I would say I was shy. I found it kind of hard to interact with them at the start. You know, these are people you looked up to, and it's kind of you're a wee bit awestruck, that kind of way. But on the pitch, I'd made my mind up that I was going to go there and enjoy it as much as possible. I think, you know, Rory Gallagher made it kind of easy for me. He kind of said, just listen, come up, enjoy the training, try and take as much on board as possible. He goes, you know yourself, that's very unrealistic that you're going to play in a game time this year. So just focus on training every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and learn as much as you can from them sessions. And, you know, there was a great comfort in that, because I knew all I had to focus on was being ready for them sessions. You know, and then you're playing your club games at the weekend, and it was just a very enjoyable time to be up with. One way to put it is your heroes, like.
Yeah, definitely. I can only imagine, because you would have been what age in like 2012? You would have been like,
I would have been 16.
16, like, yeah. So to be playing with these lads, like, who would be everyone in the county would know them, and they're obviously a historic achievement. Like must have been great. Like, so what was the kind of the big things you noticed, like that step up? Like, what was the kind of, like you mentioned earlier, it was the last 40 minutes of training, but in terms of like the physicality and stuff, like how big of a change is that for a young lad coming off club football and underage football? Like how do you adapt to that physicality? Because I'm sure those training sessions must have been brutally tough sometimes, like with the hits and that. Like,
I think it's something you're just gonna have to get used to at the start. I would have suffered a lot of hamstring injuries kind of growing up. And one of the first things Rory Gallagher said to me was you need to be able to train 25, 30 sessions consistently, not missing any training sessions. So that was the big emphasis he put on me for going into 2016, was just getting my body durable enough to withstand the load of the training that I was going to be doing. So, if it was going to be legs, I had to do whole body gym sessions. With the way my body was built, I just had to put on the mass and the strength to be able to withstand the training. So I was going to have to go through a tough pre-season where I'd be doing legs in the gym on a Monday, or a whole body session on a Monday and Wednesday, and then training as well on a Tuesday and Thursday. And I think it's very important just to be able to stick at that. It's very tough for the first 4 or 5 months. It really is, but it was in 2017 then I started to really, reap the benefits of it. My injuries went way down. Wasn't picking up any muscular injuries. Every injury I was getting was an impact as a result of a hit.
Yeah.
Which was just unpreventable. But I think whenever you go in, you kind of just have to stick at exactly what your coaches are giving you. It mightn't happen for you immediately, but as I think Paul Fisher always used to say, it's very hard to build a house if the foundations are poor. Yeah. And I had to just go back to the basics and get my foundations built up in terms of my strength before you can start to really reap the benefits of it. And consistency, and it is the key. I think I went through about 5 or 6 years there where the max I would have taken off and doing gym was whenever I was on holidays. That was it. I just done it consistently for 5 or 6 years. I might necessarily been training with Donegal, but I knew I needed to continue to tick over the gym. And it's funny then, in 2018 then, after at the end of the season, I felt that my body needed a break from the gym work. I just felt, a wee bit tired. Probably for the first time from when I was 16 back in 2012, I played the whole way through with no real break. And I stopped the gym for about, I would say, a week and a half, and I injured my hamstring then in the club game. So I think it was a harsh lesson just to continue to stick at it. And the consistency of it really is the key.
And what were the kind of things that you felt you needed to work on, like as a player? Because were you always, I'm sure underage club football you would have been, but at inter-county level, to be a defensive player, but to be also an attacking threat, is that something you've had to work on all through your career? Is that something you kind of has come naturally to you? Because that's probably what you would be best well known from, is your attacking, your ability to join the attack and then to finish, create scores and stuff. Finish.
It's kind of funny for me. Whenever I was under 12 and playing for the team that won Division 1 county title, I was actually playing as a full forward. And then I came every year after, I ended up going further and further back the field. So I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign or what. But no, I think that's another thing, I think I learned an awful lot from, was I played in a lot of different positions growing up when I was coming up through the ranks. Declan played me at full forward as well at the odd stage. Then I went to halfback. And I remember the game where I kind of fell upon halfback as my position. Declan was kind of playing me as a full forward the whole way up. And we played Dublin again in a challenge game whenever we were under 16. And we had a couple of injuries in the halfback line, so he just threw me in the halfback line. And kind of that was my position then for him the whole way, kind of coming up, but I kind of just fell into it as a result of injuries rather than it being my natural position. But for Killybegs, I always would have played midfield. So, I had that kind of energy built up from playing midfield, for Killybegs. But in terms of the attacking side of the game, you know, time on the shoulder or run off the shoulder, when to go, when not to go, I think. And nowadays the game is far more fluid. You kind of have to be able to do both. You know, and I think instinct in that there is something you can develop. You kind of to be looking to see how the play is developing, looking 2 or 3 plays ahead, what looks like is going to happen here. Kind of, you know, you need to be planning your head about what's going to happen. It's kind of like chess nearly. You have to kind of try and guess where the pieces might end up and whether you can get on the end of a move or not. But even like in terms of carrying the ball, you have to notice if, you know, you might have an overload on your side, or you might have an extra player. Now, with a lot of teams seem to play a +1 or a sweeper, you know, sitting back in front of the full back line. So you should have an extra man around the field. And if the ball switches to your side, is it a 3v2 in your favour? If it is, then you should probably go hard. You know, sprint at the nearest man, try and bring other people into the game instead of slowing the game down. And then just, I think a lot of it is based off instinct, you know, whether the ball's going to be kicked, carried, identifying the scenario that kind of is in front of you and just trying to read it off that.
Yeah, so when you're basically looking at how you think the play is going to be in 3 or 4 or 5 seconds time, and then you're making your run, would you find yourself making a lot of runs in a game and not getting on the end of the ball, like where you've ended up on the other side of the 45, you know?
Yeah, I think it's very important as well to be aware of what other players are around you. You know, if there's a player free in your side and you're being marked, are you making the player beside you be marked as well? I think it's very important to move in that scenario. You know, I think Dublin are probably the best team at rotating their whole team around the field. If one player leaves one position, how can you fill that space? Can you get in, make a move, show for the ball? Like even Kerry, they're very fluid, you know, when they're positioning, their forwards aren't too worried, but the movement, I think if everybody stood still, there'd be no space to move into, so it's very important to continue to move that kind of way. And fortunately, Donegal will probably have blessed to have one of the best players at it, is Ryan McHugh. You know, he's unbelievable because instinct to just go and go as hard as he possibly can. That sounds very simple, but it is one of the best attributes he has. Is he sniffs it nearly as soon as the turnover happens or a chance seems to happen, and he's away like before a lot of other people would even see it. You know, so I think whenever you are doing your run as well, it's important to go as hard as you possibly can. Don't just be making a run for the sake of it. I think most defenders pick up on that, you know, pretty easily. So I think you make your run as hard as you possibly can.
No, that's great, because it's great to see like this Donegal team now multiple attacking threats, not just from the, like, you know, you look at players like the way Peter Morgan was able to come on this year, like Ryan's obviously there, like, you know, then like it seems to be a very talented squad of players. Like it's not, you know, they're not just like typecast cornerbacks that are good at marking, but they're also like good attacking threats, good midfield, good kick out options, all that kind of stuff. Just, you know, for players that play in the backs and they want to be an option for the kick out, you know, because that's something we see now is that, you know, a lot of backs will kind of almost turn their back to the goalkeeper and not want to be like a receiving option for a thing. What are you thinking about during your kick out? Obviously, you probably have an idea of where the ball is going to go, but, you know, what's going through your mind during the kick out stage of the game?
I think one of the things about our kickers is, you know, is we're blessed to have, you know, Sean Patton, probably one of the best keepers around. You know, he's very confident and he is just a fantastic kicker of the ball. But as an outfield player, I think it's the way to treat a kick out is kind of like a free kick. You're in possession of the ball, you need to get the possession back. If you're a free kick, you don't want to kick a free kick as a 50-50. I think kickouts need to be looked at as the exact same way. You know, and I think it's very important for every single player in the team to be in the one wavelength that, you know, every player in the team has to want the ball. You know, it's so important. If just 2 or 3 players are looking for the ball, it's very easy to sniff out, and more than likely it will be a 50-50 then.
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, whenever you kick the ball long, obviously, and you win the break, you're in a much more dangerous position than when you are. But I think number one for a lot of teams now is getting possession first and foremost, and then, playing from there. But in terms of my mentality, going out for kick out, it is literally just move, try and get free, give Sean an option. The more options he has, the better chance you have of getting it. It is just as simple as that there. Just treat it like a free kick and just get everybody to move. And the more energy you show, the better chance you have of getting it.
That's it's very simple, but it's very effective. Like, I mean, it's just be an option, be an active option. And, even if you're not the intended target and you get the ball, then you can do something with it. But if you just take yourself out of the game, then you're obviously making it easier for the other team then to take hold. No, that's great. And in terms of, just a few questions we had here, in terms of your own role models, that people you've kind of tried to emulate, like, when you've grown up, is there any kind of, players in particular that, you like to try and emulate in your own game? Or is there any kind of particular heroes you had, like, that you want to take what they had and bring it into your own game?
I suppose, I used to love Declan O'Sullivan from Kerry. It's kind of a funny one now. He's a centre half forward and I'm playing cornerback, but I used to love him whenever I was growing up. He was such a natural footballer, lovely balance, soloing off both feet. I just thought he was a fantastic player to watch. Obviously within Donegal, Carl Lacey, was a fantastic player.
Yeah.
He's Donegal's most decorated ever footballer, but even as a person, he was so driven. His attitude was 100%. I'd say every day he went out to train, he was looking to take the most out of every session, whether that be a gym session, recovery session. I just loved the way he played the game. He always seemed to be playing at the front foot, putting the forward kind of in the back foot, and then able to defend so well as well. But whenever I went up to senior, even in my own club, a player I used to watch was Jason Noctor. Yeah. He's actually out now in Boston at the minute, but every day he went out, it was flat to the mat, regardless of whether he was, like, there was a lot of days he would have been injured playing for Killybegs. Unfortunately, just with the way things were, like, he played a lot of soccer, like, he was doing a lot of both, he was playing both soccer and Gaelic at the weekend, so he wouldn't train much during the week, but even when he was out to play at the weekend, then he was still giving absolutely 100%. Like, you wouldn't even have known. It was just a great mentality he had. It's kind of, I was watching the Last Dance documentary over the first lockdown over here about Dennis Rodman was chatting about how he'd come out and he was just able to go 100 miles an hour 100% of the time, and that was kind of like, Jason Noctor. He was able to just bring that mentality that no matter what, he was going to go out and give it his all to try and win the game. And I thought that was, it was kind of my first training sessions as a player with the senior team was with Killybegs, and I thought he was fantastic. Really was an eye-opener. I'd never seen anything else like that in my life. I was the first player I seen like that, so it's something I remember when I went up to Killybegs training for the first time.
Oh, that's nice. And have you any? Obviously, the last year has been difficult for anyone, for everyone. But have you any guidance for people on how to stay focused? With the prospect of another lockdown being going on, how were you able to stay focused over the lockdown period, or is it something like everyone you find tough going?
I think I've spoken to a lot of players about this. I think the biggest thing a lot of people found going into the lockdown was the fact that we're so used to being in a team setting as Gaelic footballers. We're always in a team, or if it's soccer or, I don't know, American football out there, basketball, like, you're training within a team. Whereas a lot of training in the last year or so has kind of been done on an individual basis. Which I had a wee bit of familiarity with from athletics. I'd done a lot of that training by myself with just one coach, and that was just the way it was, and it didn't really bother me. And I think this is probably, everybody's probably saying the exact same, but just break it down week by week. Which probably, like, I break down what training sessions I have to do for the week or what I want to get done, and then I plan out when I'm going to do them, and I just stick rigidly to that. And then when it gets to a Sunday again, I'm like, right, what sessions do I need to do this week? And do the exact same. And then before you know it, 4 or 5 weeks have passed, and you can look back and you probably could have 14, 15 sessions done, or 20, 21 sessions done. And that's just the way I looked at it. There was no point. I didn't look too far in advance because there was so much in the unknown, the unknown, that you didn't know what was going to happen. So I just kind of broke it down week by week. What do I have to do this week? What do I have to do this week? And just took it from there. I didn't dwell too much on what was going to happen in the first lockdown because we didn't really know. Like, we had to continue to train probably for the National League, or the end of the National League, which could have been played at the end of April, and then it was put back to May and then June. So we just continued to try and keep ticking over. But it was just important to break it down week by week, I think, is the big key, and kind of write down what you want to get out of a week and see if you achieved it by the end of the week.
You didn't learn any new languages or go baking cakes or anything, no? Or any other stuff, no?
No, I did not. I actually started reading a good few more books, was what I started to do. But luckily enough for me, I was still working. I still had that routine. And I think routine is hugely important. So I was delighted, I was working from home, but I was still delighted to have, a wee bit of routine in my day that I had. I was working from 9 to 5:30, and that was it.
So you're still able to form a regular enough routine, like with you were getting up early, probably doing a bit, and then days work, and then finishing, keeping a regular training schedule. Would that be? That's great. So I think if what we're taking from it is basically to break it down, look at it as a weekly challenge every week. Just try and establish your goals, and then try and create a plan to achieve those goals, and then move on to the next week without trying to look 4 months down the line or 3 months. Just go at it in small pieces, I think, is probably what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's well summed up. Yeah, one step at a time, just.
That's deadly. And in terms of your own routines then before games, is nerve still something that affect, like I just asked Angela Watch this during the week, like if you have a big game, say an Ulster semi-final or an Ulster final on Sunday, is it going through your head kind of all week? You're like, oh, fuck, I'm marking whoever, or I've got this, and all the week you're thinking to yourself, Jesus, what if this happens, or what if this happens? Or is it just like, have you any kind of little tips to help players, like how to face those mental challenges?
It's kind of something I've tried to, work on a wee bit. Because I hear Rory McIlroy be talking about a good bit, the psychology around it and visualization and that kind of thing. It's becoming more and more prominent. I think, Liverpool Soccer Club now in England, have brought in a sports psychologist with them. I think it's it's a bigger and bigger area, but I think there's no point worrying about things you can't control. I think that seems to be a consistent part of it is, focus on your own things, your preparation, hydration, food, your just the simple things. And then, I wouldn't really get too nervous going into a game, but I think, if you are feeling a wee bit nervous, I think learning how to control your breathing seems to be hugely important. It just helps you control all your emotions. There's actually a book by Dr. Steve Peters, I think it's called The Chimp Paradox. Kind of talks about this chimp that's in your head telling you, all the things that's going to kind of throw you off your game. And it's just, the whole book's about learning how to control your chimp, kind of. Right. So I think it's just important to continue to focus on the positives. I think if your manager's picked you to pick or mark a good player, he's more than likely done it for a reason. Or if you picked the start, he's more than likely done it for a reason. Or if you're on the bench, just focus on what can I bring to the game whenever I get in. If I only get 10 minutes, what can I do? And just think positive thoughts. I know that's probably a bit of a cliche as well, but I think if you let fear come into your head and be an overwhelming factor, I think it will have a negative effect on your performance. So I think only think positive outcomes. Going through your head. Don't appreciate the fact you might lose, but still believe that 100% you're going to win. And the worst thing that can happen is you lose. It's not the end of the world. It's a game of football at the end of the day. You know, there's a lot bigger things happening, and just have belief in the fact that you have the work done going into the game, and that everyone else in your team is going to try their utmost best. And if you try your best, then sure,
that's all you can do.
There's a lot of satisfaction you can take from that.
No problem. No, that's great. And so, Mickey, have you any last questions? Granted.
I think one's covered. Nearly everything. Just on the last piece of advice, coaches.
Is it the best piece of advice?
Yeah, I think that's best piece of advice. Yeah.
I think Paul O'Connell said it. It's not exactly from a coach, but it's something that's kind of stuck in my mind. Is be the best at everything that only requires, or be the best at everything that doesn't require any talent. So be the best prepared, have the best mindset going in, be the best teammate possible. None of those things requires you having a talent. And I think if every single player went into every training session and game with that attitude, I think you go a long way as a team, you know, and as a development of a person. There's nothing there that's overly hard. Preparation, being on time. It's just wee simple things that kind of add up and make you a better player and a better teammate. And I think, you know, if it's good enough for Paul O'Connell when he said it when he was with the Lions, I think it's good enough for, you know, us playing for Killybegs or Donegal or any young person playing for New York, you know, or their clubs out there in New York.
Very good. I think that's a great piece of advice. And finally, are you available for a J1 this summer, Eoghan, if the lockdown's still on over there?
Nah, not this summer.
Maybe not this summer. We'll think about it next year, maybe, like, you know. But yeah, we'd love you to come out here, whether it's playing or coaching or just visiting. It'd be great. And want to say thanks very much for taking the time out. Like, I know you've other things going on, like, but you know, those small little things, all common sense, but it's just great to hear it, you know, from somebody who's achieved it at a very, very high level. And we can't thank you enough for giving us your time the last hour and the last couple of days. So thanks very much, Eoghan, for helping out with us and New York GA players.
Thanks, man, Simon and Mickey. All the best going forward, and hopefully we'll get out and play a bit of Gaelic football this summer anyways. Definitely.
Name your price and we'll bring you out here, like, you know. No problem, bro. All right, well, take it easy anyways, Eoghan, and best of luck this year. We hope to see you beating Derry and everyone else, like, you know. So we'll see about it, like, you know. But thanks very much, Eoghan. We'll talk to you soon then. So, all right.
Thanks, man. See you. Thank you.